So now the panel discussion will be looking at here regarding the sustainability of supplier, as in the journey, and especially looking at the partnerships between the internal stakeholders. So we have seen sort of a number of initiatives and growing pressure from the stakeholders, consumers. Earlier session, if you had tuned in, you probably listened to Livio from UNDP giving the same sort of information, the challenges sort of faced by the multinational companies and various companies. So, and again, this is something we have seen quite sort of coming up often now. And from a Sedex, we also had actually published a publication, especially for companies on the sustainable supply chain recently. But when we again look at the current scenarios from the companies, they're being faced with the difficulties to maintain the balance between the customer requirements, supply chains. So this session is going to be particularly looking at sort of how that can be maintained. So without a further ado, let me introduce the panel we have today. So starting with Hugh. So Hugh joining us from Lego. So he's the senior manager for responsible sourcing. Then we got Mardi Job joining us from Australia from Fresh Produce Group. She's a technical officer there. And then Sridevi from the Walmart. She's a senior director at the Walmart office. And then we got Sunita Roy Diaz, who is from Procter & Gamble. So she's the purchasing manager for global citizenship. So what I will do, I'll pass the sort of screen to our next panelist to introduce just a bit more, and they will be sharing the presentation slides. So I will stop from my side. So Hugh, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Vishal. So I will share my screen. Yes, let me know if you can see my screen now.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, we can see the screen.
Perfect.
It's just not in the presentation mode. Yeah, it is.
It is now. Okay. Yeah, thanks, Vishal. Can you hear me well?
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. My name is Hugh from Lego Responsible Sourcing team. It's really glad to meet you all online. And thanks for Sedex to create this opportunity for me to share the Lego Group sustainability efforts. So today I will share who we are as a Lego Group and why sustainability is so important to us and sustainability efforts we made in the next 5 minutes. So who we are, for those of you who may not be familiar with the Lego Group, we are a family-owned Danish business. Our headquarters are based in a small town called Billund in southwestern Denmark. It's the same town where the company was founded by Paul Kirk Christiansen in 1932. In fact, his original workshop still stands and houses our archives where you can find every set ever made and more. Today, we are the #1 toy company in the world. Our products are sold in more than 130 countries, and there are more than 18,800 colleagues worldwide, working to achieve our ambition to bring Lego play to children everywhere. And importantly, we are the most reputable brand based on the global analysis by the Reputational Institute. How we do business is extremely important to us. And our colleagues are guided by our mission to inspire and develop the builders of tomorrow. Why we have set ourselves this ambition? Because the research shows that when children play, they learn, and we want to help them do this. So for us, we champion the benefits for play is something we've been doing since 1932. Our name Lego comes from the Danish play well. And during the past 87 years, we've continually challenged ourselves to innovate and bring new dimensions to play. So this passion for innovation is something that drives us each year. More than 60% of our products are new, which is a testament to the creativity and imagination of our 250 designers from more than 40 countries who are based in Beyond. So why is sustainability so important to us? We believe how we operate is just as important to us as what we do. Our focus on acting responsibly has been something we've been committed to since our founder gave back to his local village in Denmark. And that was the inspiration for something we call our planet promise. It's our promise to today's children and future generations that we will have a positive impact on both the planet and the society they will one day inherit. Consumers' sentiments on sustainability is changing fast and creating a new commercial reality for business. And then there has also been an acceleration in climate-related legislation in the past 20 years. So we would like to fulfill our planet promise and contribute to the efforts to shift consumer and shopper trends, creating an increased sense of urgency. And as a company who looks to children as our role model, we are inspired by millions of kids who have called for more urgent action on climate change. We believe they should have access to opportunities to develop the skills necessary to create a sustainable future. And our 2032 brand vision is to be a global force for establishing and innovating learning through play, and the sustainability is at the heart of that. Meanwhile, we were focusing on SDG number 4, quality education, and the number 12, responsible consumption and production, to drive the efforts for all children to develop and apply skills to improve life, planet, and the society. Meanwhile, leave a positive environmental footprint by promoting a business model where products never become waste. So last month, we just have announced our plans to invest up to 400 million US dollars across the next 3 years to accelerate sustainability and the social responsibility initiatives, driving meaningful long-term change and to align on our brand vision to build a sustainable future in 3 dimensions. So first is children. By 2022, 8 million children annually will be reached through global and local community programs in 27 different countries. They will focus on bringing play to children to help them develop a lifelong skills and learn about sustainability. 2 million parents and caregivers will be reached to educate them about the lifelong benefits of play. We will also continue to set the standard for responsible engagement with children with a focus on online engagement. So where we protect their rights and well-being across all of the LEGO Group's digital experience. And at environment part, we will drive carbon neutral manufacturing operations and launch LEGO Replay in 2 more countries by 2022. No waste to reach landfill, and all packaging 100% sustainable by 2025. Then all products made from sustainable materials by 2030. And for people promise is also one of our key promise. We will continue and enhance responsible sourcing program grounded in the LEGO Group's responsible business principles, and continue focus on family-friendly workplaces and support for children and the communities. And but last but not least, at a time when the world is facing numerous challenges, companies must take action to create a lasting positive impact on the environment in society. No one can do it alone, and we highly value and appreciate the partnership on this important work to create a sustainable future for our children and the builders of tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Olivier. Thank you, Hugh, for such a wonderful, again, the presentation side. So if I can ask our next panelist, Mardi, to share her screen and just to give us more information from their side. Mardi, over to you.
Thank you very much. I would just put it onto presentation view. Is that working on your side?
Yep, we can see it.
Oh,
Indeed.
great.
Thank you.
Well, good afternoon to you all. So yeah, this session is titled Supplier Sustainability Journey. However, I'll be particularly sharing on the responsible sourcing journey of the company I work for, or as other presenters have referred to, the responsible business journey. So I'm speaking today as an example of a typical supplier complying to customer requirements. So the best way to communicate a journey would be to set the scene. I will be briefly sharing about the type of company Fresh Produce Group is, followed by the development of responsible sourcing as an industry in Australia, where I'm based, including our customer responsible sourcing requirements, and finally how responsible sourcing is managed in our business. So briefly on Fresh Produce Group. So we're an Australian company and our head office is based in Sydney, and our operations include a range of domestic trade, imports, exports, mainly into Asia, wholesale, logistics and produce management, such as pre-packing, cool storage, ripening and fumigation. We do innovation, particularly in the development of new varieties for our farms, but I'll get to our farms in a minute. We do third-party logistics, quality assurance, including quality control, biosecurity and shelf life management, marketing, and growing. So the map on the right indicates the location of a few of our farms, including citrus, grapes, and berries. And fortunately, this is an Asian Pacific audience, so you may recognize a few of these logos, particularly Smartberries and Treviso, as we export these brands into Asia. But our focus today isn't on our overseas customers, it's our local retail customers. So Coles, Woolworths, Aldi and Costco are our main retail customers. And this is actually where Fresh Produce Group journey in responsible sourcing really begins. In 2016, our first customer began requiring compliance to responsible sourcing measures to keep our business with them and to continue supply. So our first customer required that all Tier 1 suppliers, or in other words, direct suppliers, such as ourselves, Fresh Produce Group, become a member of Sedex. So we did that. Then we had to connect to our customer using the Sedex platform and complete a self-assessment questionnaire. And for those of you who might not use Sedex yet, this is similar to performing an internal audit. Then another retail customer of ours released their requirements, a labour hire policy. And then another customer required a social audit, SMETA. Then yet another customer required the Sedex membership, labour hire information, and if considered a high-risk supplier, a SMETA audit too. Once customers set their base requirements for their first-tier suppliers, adaptations were made. So that was around 2018. For example, most of our customers now recognise social audits from alternative brands. In addition to responsible compliance to Tier 1, Tier 2 and Tier 3 supplier compliance was rolled out. This came along with further requirements including site visits, reporting on audit dates, when corrective actions were being closed out, etc. You get the picture. Customer compliance in the realm of responsible sourcing, although definitely striving for a good cause, has become rather complicated and complex. And as you can see, our responsible sourcing journey for Fresh Produce Group definitely started as a means to tick the box in order to continue business and supply. So a question you might be asking, especially the attendees out there who can relate to much of Fresh Produce Group's experience, is how did you manage meeting these responsible sourcing requirements? Well, that's a good question, especially when, to begin with, we had no idea what responsible sourcing even meant. So I work as a part of our technical department, or in other words, the Science and Compliance Department for Fresh Produce Group. We handle things such as food safety, food quality, biosecurity, and since 2016, responsible sourcing compliance as well. All communications about responsible sourcing from the customer came directly to our department. And so essentially we have ended up managing Fresh Produce Group's responsible sourcing program. If the customer requires information relating to Fresh Produce Group's internal processes and policies, however, it gets handled by our Human Resources department. Or if the customer requires information relating to one of our suppliers, we communicate this to our commercial department. So to give you an idea of what kind of practices each of our departments look after in regards to responsible sourcing, I've broken it down here. So as I mentioned, technical, we manage our responsible sourcing program from scheduling when our businesses and suppliers require Sedex SAQ updates. We train suppliers on how to use a Sedex platform or general guidance as to what responsible sourcing is. And we book social audits. For HR, they complete all of our Sedex self-assessment questionnaires and their annual reviews. They handle social audits on the day of audit. They manage our worker pay, health and safety processes and policies within the company, as well as the general worker well-being. And as you may have noticed, the Modern Slavery Act on the right-hand corner was added into my additional responsible sourcing requirements. As has been discussed earlier today and yesterday, this has become a new requirement in which we need to meet, and we will be reporting on this by the end of the year. So this will be managed by our HR department as well. Our commercial department are very key as they have a personal relationship with our supply base. As we all know, information that comes from someone we know and trust will be much easier to listen to than someone who we don't know and trust. So we consult with this department before any communication with our growers. Although I might add that largely in the last few years, our technical department have developed a relationship with many of the suppliers' compliance teams too. So although Fresh Produce Group's journey started with responsible sourcing as a means of box ticking, we have learned a lot. As almost everyone has identified over the last few days, we've come to recognise that due diligence in responsible sourcing is a part of not just doing business, but doing good business. So we are a proud Sedex member. Through completion of the self-assessment questionnaires, we have reviewed and developed new HR policies. For examples, we've now included an environmental policy, a child labour policy, and a human rights policy. Through the social audits, we have implemented it to be done annually at all of our warehouses, and we've gradually rolled this out across some of our farms as well. We've moved from using labour hire companies to have full direct employment on all of our farms. We've increased investment in supporting grower awareness of responsible sourcing, in addition to guidance and training to retail customers' responsible sourcing requirements. And most recently, we've begun working with our customers in grower responsible sourcing communications. So Fresh Produce Group looks to continue to develop new ways to maintain focus on well-being, on being proactive in doing business responsibly, not just reactive. So I'll leave you with an image of one of our citrus farms looking into the distance amongst lush trees and blue skies. We're all on a journey to improve responsible sourcing in our supply chains, and this picture evokes it's a hopeful journey, as we've all seen over the last few days. There's developments in this space across multiple sectors and countries with many tools and services available to support our growth in this journey. So looking forward to hearing from the other presenters. Thank you.
Thank you, Maudie. Such a wonderful landscape actually to see there. So yeah, I do have some questions, but I'm going to hold off for those, especially balancing the commercial relationships and what you did mention to our audience. when you look at the customer requirements. So I'll probably get those questions later, but let me pass the sort of now stage to Sridevi, who can sort of share from her side from Walmart their sort of more insights, and then we can dive deeper. So Sridevi, over to you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. I hope everyone can see my screen. So good morning and good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here with all of you. And my name is Sridevi Kalavakulnu. I am a senior director in Walmart's ethics and compliance team. I've been with Walmart since 2008 and have led the responsible sourcing program across Asia. That includes the 3 markets of Walmart, China, Japan, and India, as well as the global sourcing hubs. Prior to Walmart, I worked with Business for Social Responsibility in San Francisco, where I helped companies to develop compliance programs. And I would say that throughout my career, my purpose has been twofold. One is to enable the business to make the right decisions to fulfill our vision of being responsible and sustainable, while at the same time, and the second is to ensure that in doing so, we are protecting workers' lives and promoting their livelihoods. So in this quick introduction, I would like to give you a little bit of context to sort of step back from the supply chain, if you will, and talk about what it takes to lead on social and environmental issues for a company with the scale that Walmart has. So very quickly, who we are. We began as one store in 1962 in Bentonville, Arkansas, in the US. Today, we are a retailer with over 11,500 stores and clubs in 27 countries, as well as e-commerce websites. We have more than 2 million associates or employees and a revenue of over $524 billion. We are a recognized leader in sustainability, corporate philanthropy, and employment opportunity. And what I'm going to try and show you is that all 3 of these are interlinked. And in our journey to become a leader, there have been a number of inflection points, and the strategies and choices that we've made at those inflection points has really shaped who we are. So our mission is to save people money and help them live a better life. And this is true across all of the countries that we operate in. And when we talk about helping people save money and living a better life, it applies not just to our own associates, but also to the workers and employees in the supply chain who make the products we sell. It applies to our suppliers and all of our stakeholders as well. So this is a quote from our CEO, Doug McMillon, but it really emphasizes the approach we've taken, which is a multi-stakeholder view. We believe that our own shareholders benefit in the long term as we serve our customers well and create opportunity for our associates. At the same time, we are also finding win-win opportunities in working with our marketplace sellers and suppliers, and in turn, investing to strengthen the communities and take action to protect our planet. Without a healthy planet and strong communities, there is no business. So while we may begin with our own shareholders and our associates and our immediate customers, we recognize that the impact we have extends far and wide and really shapes who we are and what we are attempting to achieve in being a leader in sustainability and responsibility. So really, the impact that we are seeking to achieve can be summed up in the term shared value. And I'll spend a little bit of time talking about what we mean by that. Essentially, we're trying to create value for society through our business, but also by collaborating on systems change and extending the social impact that we can have through our philanthropy. So we are really trying to hit that sweet spot between societal impact and business impact and leading through the business, through the company that we are. But we also recognize in doing so, we have other important levers that we want to make sure that we're also using. Everything we do needs to impact, we understand has an impact on both business and society. So we'd like to create shared value. We would like to catalyze whole system change We are part of a broader system wherever we operate. And when we attempt to create shared value, an important part of that is improving the whole system. We also believe that we can use our philanthropy to accelerate this social impact, and we cannot achieve all of this alone. While we use our size and scale to impact the most challenging issues that we face in our planet today, it's very important that we collaborate across the chain. So let me spend a minute here just talking about what we mean specifically by shared value. Several of you may have heard this term before. It is a management strategy that focuses on companies creating measurable business value by identifying and addressing social problems that intersect with their business. We believe at Walmart there are 3 levels where we can create shared value. The first level is to provide products and services that meet societal needs. As an example here is affordable and safe food for all of our customers. The next level would be where we are focused on improving the operating model. This is where we're focused on renewable energy for our stores, which in turn impacts the planet, as well as education for all of our associates. And finally, level 3 is where we want to strengthen societal systems. This is where the whole system change comes in. And we're looking both at supply chains, which are external to us, and also at our own internal workforce development. So I'm proud to share that as a result of our work and leadership over the past several years, we are the only company to have been recognized for the last 6 years in a row as part of Fortune's Change the World list from 2014 until 2020. This recognition has been particularly for our efforts in advancing associate opportunity and environmental sustainability. Let's look a little deeper at what we mean by shared value and how we're focusing on this. So there are 3 large pillars to how we are accelerating progress on both social and environmental issues that matter most to our customers and stakeholders. The first would be opportunity. And this is where we're talking about creating economic opportunity and making efforts for our own associates. And this could be workforce development, but it's also for our suppliers. And this is where we're looking to have a more diverse supply base, diversity measured in a number of different ways in our various markets, but also very importantly, sourcing from women-owned businesses. The next pillar is sustainability, and this, I'll spend a moment coming to this in the next slide, looks at both people and planet. And lastly, community. This is about strengthening local communities wherever we operate. And really, we are a store of the community, whether we're online or brick and mortar. And we have found a number of different ways to engage and strengthen the communities that we operate in. And underlying all of this is our basic principle of transparency and being open with our stakeholders, our supplier partners, in terms of the products, people, and practices that we follow. So let me talk a minute about sustainability. Our focus is to use our strengths to help people live better and preserve the planet. So both go hand in hand. We don't believe that one can be achieved without the other. On people, our focus is very much on responsible sourcing, as well as selling sustainable products. Planet, our focus is on restoring natural resources and reducing waste and emissions. And I'll talk a little bit about our most recent announcements, as well as what we've achieved. Our aspirations are to promote worker dignity and safety. We have a robust responsible sourcing program that was established more than 2 decades ago. And I will talk more in the question QA session about how the program is structured and how we're promoting sustainability of the model with our suppliers. But I wanted to emphasize here is the term worker dignity and safety really covers a very broad gamut of issues. And I think the one thing we all recognized is this is a dynamic world that we live in. The risks evolve over time, and as compliance programs, just as the risks evolve, we need to evolve as well and ensure that we're being agile and meeting those risks. Inclusive economic opportunity is another key aspiration, whether that's for our own associates or for our suppliers, and making sure we have a diverse supply chain, having safer and healthier products that we bring to our customers. In terms of the economic focus of this pillar, we would like to be the world's most trusted retailer. And that means having the trust of not just our customers, but also our supply chain partners and all of our other stakeholders. I'll come back to the environmental pillar in terms of our most recent announcements. But I wanted to say a word here about how our philanthropy supports all of this. As I said earlier, key to how we create shared value is through our business, but our philanthropy plays a really important role in ensuring that we're creating an enabling environment around any of the issues that we're trying to impact. I'll focus here on people in the supply chains. I've talked about worker dignity. Working closely with smallholder farmers and entrepreneurs is also key, and building an ecosystem in countries, whether that's India or elsewhere, where we are reaching out and building that next pipeline of suppliers is critical. We've also had a huge focus on dignity of women, whether that's through factory training programs in our own supply chain or enabling, for example, small women farmers to gain the skills to grow. Let me come now to our most recent announcements, which were made last month by our CEO, Doug McMillon. We are committed to becoming a regenerative company. And what this means is we would like to place nature and humanity at the center of our business practices. So this is not something that's added on later, but is really core to how we operate as a company. In terms of specific goals that we've announced, we are targeting to reach zero emissions by the year 2040 and achieve 100% renewable energy by 2035. We are also working to avoid a 1 gigaton of greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. That is the equivalent of taking 211 million cars off the road for an entire year. That's what 1 gigaton stands for. We're also going to help protect, to manage or restore 50 million acres of land and 1 million square miles of ocean by 2030. We will create zero waste in key markets by 2025 and have 100% recycled packaging for our own private label by 2025. And on the people aspect, I will talk more about our responsible sourcing program, but two key callouts here is that we are aiming to make responsible recruitment across the supply chain a standard business practice by 2026, and accelerate economic opportunity for small-scale suppliers through direct farm and inclusive sourcing practices. So finally, I wanted to share with you a few of our achievements since we began this journey. I won't go through each and every one of these, but I wanted to highlight a few key achievements. Walmart and Sam's Club have sourced more than 11.7 billion from diverse suppliers. We've had more than 2,300 suppliers signed on to Project Gigaton. And if you look at our global markets, more than 34.4 billion has been spent with women-owned businesses in the last 7 years. And we have contributed more than 4.5 billion pounds in food donations and over 120 million in grants to support Feeding America. So again, I'm looking forward to the discussion in the rest of the session to really look at our supply chains and specific practices. But I'm glad to have the opportunity to share this update on our overall approach and really how it has shaped who we are as a company and our aspirations going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Sridevi. Again, such a wonderful insight on the various programs you just mentioned, the social impact and the stats as well. So I think, yeah, there might be some questions coming in, especially on the proposed plan, especially responsible recruitment, or whether it's zero waste policies, what you have announced. But again, yeah, I'll leave that to the audiences later on. Just a note for audience, if you joined in online, please use the Q&A there on the system to ask questions. So we'll be taking questions right after the next one. So I'll just pass it to our next speaker, Sunita from Procter & Gamble, to share more details from her side.
Yep.
Sunita, over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sure you're able to see my screen now. Hello, everyone, and good day to all of you. It's a great pleasure to be here, and thanks to the opportunity to Sedex for giving us this platform in order to share our sustainability journey. My name is Sunita Roy Dias, and my role and responsibility is of a global social audit program manager in P&G. In P&G, we proudly work towards force for good and force for growth. Our purpose and aspiration is to provide branded products and services of superior quality and value that improve the lives of the world's consumer now and for generations to come. Our heritage has been very grand and resourceful. The cornerstone of P&G's foundation are quality and honesty. So this is nothing new for us. The reality is that we've actually focused on this since the company was created. Both James Gamble and William Procter believe that the key to earning a profit was to earn the trust of people who bought their products. And that is why, if you see here, James Gamble once said, if you cannot make pure goods in full weight, go to something else that is honest, even if it is breaking stone. So this has been something which we have been, following right from the time when we have created P&G. So over time, P&G's reputation for quality products and fair dealing began to spread, and its business also began to expand, shaping the global company that we are today. So a lot of it is not new. We are just calling it something different. At P&G, we value citizenship to a very great extent. It is meant to be a long-term strategy to help us win with consumers. So what does citizenship really mean to P&G? For us, we want to be known through words and concrete action as a company that is responsibly governed. We pride ourselves of having strong code of ethics since we were conceived. We pride ourselves in being open and transparent in our business dealings. We pride ourselves in being good corporate citizens that respect human rights, support good causes, and protect the environment. And we also pride ourselves in being an appealing place to work that treats its employees well. Citizenship at P&G, we have 5 pillars where we follow, and we have publicly committed to doing what is right and being a good corporate citizen. These are the 4 pillars we actually focus across. So at P&G, we operate under our purpose, values, and principles, whereby we strive to do the right thing every day. The company works to be a force for good and a force for growth through sustainability, community impact, equality and inclusion, and ethics and corporate responsibility. Being compliant with regulations and operating ethically is important for our organization compliance, which helps us reduce legal, environmental, and social risk. This is our message from our CEO, David Taylor, on citizenship. And the most important part of this message being that for us, citizenship is built in and not bolted on. It's not a separate thing that we do on the side. It is how we do business every day around the world. So the force for good and the force for growth concept is very important, as we are sharing our shareholders, we are serving our investors, we are serving our employees, we are serving our business partners, suppliers, community, governments, and the broader world around us. So it becomes even more important for us to drive growth in context with responsible sourcing, which we do every day in our work life. As far as ethics and corporate responsibility is concerned, where I lead this particular pillar across the globe, we have created a strategy for PNG in context of making sure how we do responsible sourcing. So in context with social audits in high-risk countries, the strategy adopted by PNG was to engage internally with ethics and compliance team and externally with the organizations like SHIFT, a leading think tank on UN principles on human rights, to ensure right processes for remediation, and compliances definitely help reduce legal, environmental, and social risk for us. PNG used the Maplecroft assessment of human rights in various countries and selected India as a country to further assess. Now, PNG created a timeline that considered the region's context along with the assessment. These were slotted as per wave. So we put India in the first wave. Next, we considered critical spend to identify the suppliers with whom we should engage with about SMETA audits. We partnered with Sedex, who have been very, very instrumental in our strategy development in context with responsible sourcing. So we partnered with them to have a repository tool for all our suppliers to register, initiate an audit, and also to hold an audit in their database. Suppliers who already had a SMETA audit would upload the audit report in the Sedex database, which would then be transferred to our PNG dashboard, giving a great visibility to our sourcing buyers inside our organization to check in context with where each supplier is holding which status. For example, if it is red, meaning the supplier has one or more improvements. If it is amber, orange, the supplier has few improvements which he has to remediate over a course of time in context with responsible sourcing or social audit at its site. If it is green, then it is good to go, and the supplier is completely compliant. So having this kind of a strategy in place, we've had a good progress and good results. So since 2015 and 16, our team have helped coordinate more than 400 audits in our supply chain. Having access to multiple supplier records in our internal system and completing those actions helps, for us to be compliant legally as well as environmentally safe and taking care of the worker class where the social order needs are met. Now, we also do some webinars where we train our suppliers in order how to conduct audit. We do understand suppliers come from different phases of enterprises. So in order to make sure that our suppliers are understanding what needs to be done, we hold webinar in each country. Since it is COVID-19, we are doing webinars virtually where we are training our suppliers in order to make sure they understand the Sedex platform, they understand what is their next step in terms of social audit requirement and so forth. After which we have our sourcing buyers create a roadmap wherein all their suppliers are listed who are critical suppliers and are performing social audit as per the timelines understood and aligned by the supplier. So this helps us manage our human risk in our supply chain. Once the supplier have done their audit, those recordings are actually held in the Sedex database from where we have our internal database for buyers where they can see the status and help remediate action which is needed to be done in the course of time. So the benefits of Maplecroft assessment of human risk in various countries were PNG buyers are aware of the social audit requirements as of today, internally as well as externally. Then we have follow-up audits which checks critical or minor issues which may exist in each area of concern. We are working with suppliers to respect human rights and improve conditions of workers. And of course, there is a reassurance that suppliers are meeting the compliance obligation. This is a snapshot of our website, pg.supplier.com, that we have available to all our suppliers to learn more as needed in context with responsible sourcing guidelines. We also have a special PNG audit social program guidelines here, and we have something which we have loaded as far as our suppliers citizenship summit, which has been done in the past for you to see and for you to hear from our great leaders as to how PNG is taking social responsibility seriously and making sure that we are in the right path. We also have a video where David Taylor, shares his perspective on PNG's citizenship efforts, which I can probably share later to the audience. So this is what I had to share with you all today, and thanks for listening. We will continue to be a force for good and a force for growth.
Thank you, Sunita. Again, it is good to see from your side really highlighting the dashboards, how you're using as well in terms of the systems for audits. But I think the key thing really, probably I'll just ask around the same lines, because one of the major challenge when we actually hear, so I'll straight ask you a question here, especially when it comes to duplication. So we get question asked on the areas of duplication that, okay, customers have a various programs and they've been asked to perform various things. So how would you actually address this issue from a buying organizations to avoid the duplication? So if you can share some insights, Nida, from your side, as in whether you have any best practices, then we can move on to the other ones. Yeah, just the immediate question for now.
Sure.
Yep,
Vishal, would you like me to take that? All right, great. Yeah, absolutely. So I think from a buying organization perspective, I think there are several approaches that can be taken. One is, what is the end goal we're trying to achieve, right? Having alignment on that internally. And with that in mind, at Walmart, we've taken several steps to just reduce the number of audits that our suppliers would need to go through. So first off, we have a risk-based approach. So where we use publicly available information from the World Bank on governance indicators to assess sort of the macroeconomic risk environment of a country, if you will. And therefore, certain countries would be considered higher risk from a rule of law or those kind of factors versus others. So we would have, in countries that are considered to be low risk, for example, a reduced number of audits. So again, taking a risk-based approach allows us to tailor the number and schedule of audits to the actual risk that is perceived in that country. Secondly, as a company, we accept 12 different audit programs, including Sedex. So in addition to Sedex, we also accept a number of industry-specific audit programs, such as BAP, or Better Aquaculture Production, for the seafood sector, and ICTY for the toy industry, and so on. So that the goal in having a range of audit programs that we accept is to really empower suppliers to own and drive this process and make their own choices, right, as to what will suit their business needs. The intention is that by accepting industry audit programs, suppliers will be able to meet the needs of different customers. I would say that also extends to remediation, where I know that Sedex and a number of other audit programs allow for, as an issue is remediated, to update that back with the audit program, which is then reviewed, and depending again on the seriousness of the issue, that could reduce the need for a follow-up audit. And lastly, I would say, I think, from a supplier perspective, we've really been working with our suppliers to encourage them to take a management systems approach, which means having the right policies and processes in place. So regardless of what the customer's requirements may be, if the right management system is in place, then that supplier is very well placed to meet different requirements. So I'm happy to take any other questions or comments.
Yep, thank you, Sridevi. So again, the question probably more from audience now, or I would like to check actually with you. So we do get asked on the responsible sourcing journey. So when we talk about the sort of journeys with companies, each of them has, as we have seen, just now. Each of them has their sort of the own initiatives, programs, but for a supplying organization. So let's look at from the supplying organization's perspective now. When they do find quite a difficult, because if these are the various programs are sort of, so if you from your side, what would be the best practice on the responsible sourcing journey you can share with the audience from your Lego's perspective?
Yeah, glad to take that question. Taking the Lego Group's practices as an example, so at the Lego Group, we seek to work with suppliers who share our ambition and commitment, and who agree to work with us in a transparent way. So we treat our suppliers as a partner. So partner promise is one of our 4 promises. So when talking about partnership, it means long-term commitment and 2 ways of collaboration. We onboard a new supplier carefully and also phase out a supplier carefully. So most of the suppliers are quite focusing on production quality and on-time delivery. So of course, we're lucky. There are many big-scale global level suppliers who are mature as well with a good systems in place. While we can still receive the challenges in the supply chain, considering there's still various supplier types and also the geography location. So what we are doing is, so we invest our resource in helping the suppliers to build up their capabilities through various training activities and close engagement and the transparent dialogues. We trust a third-party audit firm to carry out audits, and which we think is a way to identify the gap and the risk. So to enable both the suppliers and us to work together to fix the gap and mitigate the risk. And when there's a challenge from the production or the commercial standpoint, we will step in and to discuss with business team how we can, the business team be part of the efforts to support the suppliers. That's not easy because we need to balance the business interests. But we do call out bravely to make sure that the suppliers are not receiving the pressure from the business side, and our business are not part of the pressure to worse off the social compliance issues in the supply sides. So that's something very important that we see as a best practice. And meanwhile, if we're talking about the best practice in the Lego Group responsible business principles, we have 2 levels of expectations. One is the responsibility foundation, and the next level is the best practice benchmarks. So we also encourage the best practice, which are clearly stipulated in the Lego Group responsible business principles. For example, we have a principle called family-friendly workplaces. So we will work with the suppliers to promote and to support them to carry out like the suppliers summer camp programs. And this program actually will work with our partners for about 5 years. And also we carry out the migrant parent training to the suppliers, focusing on migrant family and also the left behind children's in China. So like this year, we conduct 28 sessions in China online. That's online session, and benefits more than 600 migrant families. So all kinds of these activities are something that seem as a beyond audit that aim to support the suppliers to go beyond audit, go beyond the basic compliance, and to encourage them to do some best practice that could benefit to the workers. And also, though the purpose we support the migrant family and left behind children, but the result turned out to improve the workers' satisfaction rate and also reduce worker turnover rate. So I think it's very important to treat the suppliers as partner. That means we not only just give them the order, request them to do something, but really the 2 ways collaboration, communication to make things better. Thanks, that's my sharing.
Thank you, Hugh. Yeah, so again, that's a great perspective, what you have shared with us. So I'd like to just pose the same question to Sunita from P&G. So again, it's best practice for something which you can probably shed a light to our audience as well. So when you talk about that responsible sourcing, you highlighting earlier to us the different initiatives from your side. So how would you share more examples?
Right. So, in order to bring our supplier in this journey, we have to inspire and educate. That is what we think that we want to do on a very, great platform. Because today, our suppliers may not understand the real implication or how they need to move forward. That is always a barrier in each and every person's mind. For PNG also, going on to the journey of responsible sourcing was a learning path. We try to understand from different places like Sedex, like the think tank, how to move ahead. So we want to share perspectives from PNG leaders about why we focus on these important topics. This is intended to provide the inspiration. We want to balance that with communication that focuses on providing practical tips and tools so our suppliers know what they can actually do when they go back to office. So we also are trying to bring our external partners and councils to come in our events so suppliers can meet and have a one-on-one discussion, probably to learn more, because responsible sourcing or sustainability is quite a big area where focuses could be different. There could be different areas of work environment that the suppliers work into. So we really don't know what is their actual concern and where they need specific help. So since we have taken the effort or the energy in pioneering such areas of operation where we want to help, so I believe the most important part here is to inspire as well as to educate. And once we have done that, probably we will have more joining hands with PNG and other, organizations like Walmart and other organizations where we can make a better reflection and have better results. So that is what I would say in context with, our own programs, plus joining hands with other organization in order to have a collaborative platform where we invite them to our events and they talk to our suppliers one-on-one. That is what I had to share.
Thank you. Thank you, Sunita. Again, so that's a great perspective to hear, but I would like to probably go towards from a supplier side. So we've got Mardi. So next question I would like to just ask her, especially, so during this couple of days, what we actually have done in the conference, so we have seen the current situation and the sort of legislative landscapes is changing. So, and supply companies, let's say Fresh Waste Group, are being asked by by the buyers. They have their own initiatives. So, can you share from your side, Mardi, from Fresh Waste Group? So, how do you sort of balance, and how do you balance that one? And if you can give, let's say, an example of best practices, especially in the current situations where you have this sort of landscape is changing, the legislation is coming, but what you can actually guide or give more updates. So that's to the Mardi.
Yeah, sure. Happy to answer that. Yeah, it's interesting being, as I was sharing before in the presentation, there are multiple requirements when you do supply to multiple different customers. There is the slight differences between them can be difficult to keep up with and to know exactly what to do for each of the suppliers. Something that has come up previously is sometimes there can be a tension between the different departments, as not everyone across the organisation may be on board with this compliance aspect. As I was showing before, we had no idea what responsible sourcing was to begin with. So yeah, I'll give an example actually of what one retail customer did in their communications with us for responsible sourcing. Yeah, they actually had their commercial team communicate with our commercial team about the responsible sourcing requirements. And this is really helpful, as across lots of other different compliance areas, often communicating the importance of a compliance issue with the commercial team can be a challenge. So that was really helpful in instilling in our commercial team how important responsible sourcing was. And it wasn't just our department that was trying to drive it for the business. And it was through this commercial to commercial communication that I think ultimately changed our commercial team's new supplier approach, as they now ensure that prior to onboarding any new supplier, the supplier must demonstrate they meet the base responsible sourcing requirements for the customer, and which is a big step. However, I will highlight that one weakness in this avenue was that the commercial teams on both our side and the customer's side were essentially being the messengers of the responsible sourcing information. So part of it was actually getting lost a little bit in translation, and a large part of that was because the communications were being sent out on an email. And I'm not sure about other businesses out there, but our commercial team's a lot more on the phone. And so definitely having an initial conversation about, hey, responsible sourcing, this is a really significant issue. You're like, yep, we're on board with that. But then when the information about the details of what responsible sourcing requirements were required needed to come through to the team that had the time and the resources to make it happen for the business. So we have that customer and us, we've slightly changed our communication. So the first major step was getting the commercial team on board, check. So that was a big positive. But since then, the communication has come directly from the responsible sourcing team on the customer side through to us who manage it. And I'll also give another example from our company communicating with our suppliers. So we're tier 1 and the tier 2 suppliers for customers, is that a challenge is that our suppliers are fruit and vegetable growers of a whole range of different sizes. And the mindset of a grower is that they're always striving to do what's best for their land and for their workers. And how they do it is their own business. So understandably, when a grower is asked to reveal information in the realm of responsible sourcing, it's sensitive information. And so it's a challenge to inform growers of why they need to comply to responsible sourcing requirements, while not seemingly to accuse them that they've done something potentially wrong. So this is where the bridge between the commercial and compliance is really significant, as our commercial team already have relationships with the growers. So when a new requirement comes from a familiar, trusted person, it is much more likely to be listened to, as I mentioned in the presentation earlier. And yeah, a bit of a recap of how we manage this is when a new responsible sourcing requirement comes from a customer to the compliance department, we consult with our commercial team to inform them of the new information piece that is required of the supplier. And we ask them how they would like to approach the grower, whether they want to communicate this to the grower or they provide us with a contact to communicate with them. But it's significant in putting the decision into the commercial court, helps our teams work together on responsible sourcing, knowing that it's a joint ownership. And yeah, they definitely consider responsible sourcing something that needs to be put in place in order to do business. And yeah, that's something that we've come a long way in the past couple of years on that.
Right. Thank you, Mardi. I think you covered my next question, which we received as well, especially the balance between that commercial team and also the responsible sourcing. Yeah, you did cover that, but I'd like to pose that same to, let's say, from the buyer's perspective to Sridevi at Walmart. So as Mardi has sort of mentioned, that balance between the teams, and that is a challenging that we've sort of come across. Because each team plays obviously the different roles, commercial team being their responsible sourcing. So from a buying organization, so how you as a buying organization can support suppliers, they can maintain that balance, or any guidance you can give to the suppliers?
Sure. No, thanks, Vishal. And I completely agree with what Madhi said. And I think she really brought to life how this ideally needs to work, right? And it's a journey, right? We certainly don't get it right the first time or even the second time, and it's a learning process. But I would say there are a few principles that are really critical so we are successful. And when I say we, I mean from a customer or a buyer perspective. It's very important to have internal alignment and to be clear on the intent, the ask, and as well as the messaging. I think it's really powerful to have joint messaging, whether that's having joint meetings with commercial and responsible sourcing teams sitting side by side and engaging with suppliers, at least in that critical initial stage when the relationship is being set up. So the supplier hears one message, and being very transparent, right? So making it clear to suppliers what the expectations are. I think also before going out in front of suppliers, the different stakeholders need to be very clear on what is the process and what are the rules of engagement, right? So what is acceptable, what is not acceptable, and what are areas that maybe we can work through. I think as we've heard from the other speakers, this is not responsible sourcing can be quite complex, right? And so it's important that when a company sets out to roll out a responsible sourcing program, they align internally on what the rules are, what the boundaries are, and how to move forward. It's also a two-way street. I think buyers would also expect the same level of transparency from suppliers, so there's clarity on both sides. Yeah, I think it's about having transparency and clear rules of engagement overall.
Thank you, Sridevi. Again, so what you just mentioned, having those clear sort of rules of the engagement. So one thing I would like to ask again on the same lines. So as the topic, what we suggest that relationship between the teams. So some companies may find it difficult to pursue their commercial teams or the leadership team to think about the perspective from the responsible sourcing initiative. So could you share with our audience what approach companies can use to pursue their internal stakeholders to get them on a board with the responsible sourcing initiatives or any, let's say, sustainability in supply chains initiative?
Sure. No, thanks, Vishal. And that's a good question. And it's sort of what happens before we even get to the rules of engagement stage, right? So how do we set up the relationship for success? So I firmly believe that the role of responsible sourcing or compliance is to simplify the complexity of the world that we live in so the business can make the right decisions. So, risk is dynamic and compliance and responsible sourcing teams are really the subject matter experts whose role it is to sort of interpret that complexity in a simple enough manner so the business can really understand what's going on and make the right decisions. So as a start, I would say it's very important to be clear on roles and responsibilities between the two teams. It's also important to take the time and effort to have a clear strategy from the get-go. And when I say strategy, I mean a business strategy. I don't mean a responsible sourcing strategy. Responsible sourcing needs to be part of the business strategy at the very early stages when a business is looking to grow or expand. And as the business looks at growth areas, there will be risks. So the question is, how can responsible sourcing help to mitigate those risks? So I think having a clear and aligned strategy, which is really built with equal contributions from both sides, is very critical because you can't add it later on. It's not something that can be done as an afterthought. It has to be done at the beginning. While I would also say tone at the top is very important. Clearly, when we have support from the top leadership, it's much easier to cascade the message down, but it's not enough. Again, coming back to the strategy, once a responsible sourcing team has aligned with business leadership on what's going to be the common strategy that are going to meet the needs of both teams, then comes the hard work of really rolling up our sleeves and getting it done, right? And that is a lot of groundwork with teams at different levels who may not, again, have the same level of understanding or, just openness to what this is and how it's going to work. And I think it's also important not to take a transactional approach. This is not just about getting an audit done, right? Because it's also about building a relationship of trust with the supplier, having a clear path to where we want to go to that common vision and strategy. And that goes well beyond audits. It's remediation, it's progress, it's building that long-term vision. I would also say it's important to have a constant communication so there's no surprises on either side. Again, you want to drive visibility that will help drive performance and change behavior. And frankly, without that constant reporting and visibility, whether it's from responsible sourcing to the business or vice versa, if the business, for example, is looking to move to a new category or a new supplier, that constant exchange of information is critical. And lastly, I would say it's important for all parties not to get complacent. Again, we may have a really well-performing program, and the results may look really good. But again, we live in a complex world. So I think the question we need to always be asking ourselves is, as the business and risks are evolving, how is our program keeping up, right? What are the additional controls we need to have? So it's a constant questioning of, is the program doing everything it was designed to do? So I would say those would be what I see as the big steps, and to really build partnership and trust. And again, in the end, this is a common vision and goal for the company, but it takes a lot of hard work every day to make it happen, as we all know.
Right, indeed. Thank you, Sridevi. So I'd like to probably pose same question to from a Legos perspective to you. So what Sridevi has provided the approach one as well. So could you, from your side, share what approach you have used in the past, which has worked to make sure the responsible sourcing teams or the commercial teams, they're both sort of on the same page?
Yeah, thanks, Vishal. I think echo to Sridevi's comments. I agree with her. This is quite a complex commercial environment nowadays. And the question to me sounds very natural, because we have our own responsibilities and our own expertise. So we may think the questions and based on our own needs and our own value. So thinking about that under this complex commercial environment today, as a company, as a brand, we need to make sure we have the license to operate in a particular country or region, right? We have some laws and the regulations requirements, and even nowadays, the law and the regulations in terms of the social compliance and modern slavery are increasing. That also requires us as a responsible sourcing team to make sure that company have the license to operate. And then we have the contractual obligation to fulfill. We are partnering with our suppliers, with our business partners externally, like we are have the licensing business. So we need to make sure that these responsible business principles or code of conduct are actually a part of the contract, and we need to make sure ourselves and our partners could fulfill that. And then last but not least, I think we have a real life experience this year that is how important is a resilient supply chain to the brands, like COVID-19 or other challenges, the trade war, things like that. We'll have a deeply interruption in our supply chain that has a harm to business. So thinking about that, when facing these kinds of the challenges, if we don't have a strong compliance in place, we don't have a strong risk management in place, how can we make sure our business is resilient enough? Can we make sure we continue the business in a healthy way? So these are the reasons, and also we can say this is a value why we are here in the position in our company to protect the supply chain, to protect the company reputation. So back to the question, I think business team always have their own standpoint to drive the business, to make sure that the price and cost or the on-time delivery that's right. And also, but just about they have a different mindset. So the role we are in the company is to partner with them, to engage and communicate with them, to tell them why this responsible sourcing work and so important to the company, to the business. It's not something that they take the lesson, pay the money, and they come back to us saying yes, they need to come to us for support. But at the very beginning and along the way, we need to engage them. So we need to make sure they're aware and also understand it, and also we tell a good story to let them be fully buying our requirements and also their strategy. And of course, we cannot just expect that we tell them once upon a time and then they can just fully buy in with us. So we need to continue this engagement. This is not a one-time effort. We should make time as good friends to influence them continuously. So and also partner with them to let them know we are here actually to support the business. We are not like someone to block the business. So we are a team, as a one team in the company. So I think partnership, engagement, and collaboration makes that happen.
Right. Thank you, Hugh. Conscious of time, as we actually slightly overran the session. So I just want to sort of conclude and ask one final question to all of the panelists. So if you are to summarize and give, let's say, I wouldn't say advice, but give your sort of say on companies or anyone, let's say, whether it's SME or large organizations who are in the early stage of the responsible sourcing journey. So what that would be from your side, as you already have, you embarked on the journey. So if you are to give sort of, let's say, some information that company, so Hugh, from your side, what that would be.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think when we're thinking about that, how to develop a responsible sourcing program in a new company, I think first of all we should have a clear self-awareness, who we are as a company, what is the core value in our company, so we will understand like a vision what we are going to drive, because clear vision of the responsible sourcing based on a business feature operation model can definitely drive us in the bottom of the heart to move forward. Otherwise, we will hesitate, and also we will have a lot of obstacles. And once we have that clear vision, we need to make sure that this is something aligned with the senior leaders, so we can make efforts to involve internal and external stakeholders. I think nowadays we have a lot of resource, Sedex and all the other platforms. We can easily set up a program, but it's not easy to make the program fits well in our own organization. Also have the alignment with the leaderships. And last but not least, I would say collaboration is very important. We can't just do things alone. It is not a word we can isolate ourselves. We need to reach out and to get a partnership. Thanks.
Thank you, Hugh. Yeah, that's good to hear. So I'd like to probably pass it to Mahdi again. From your perspective, if you are to give the summary of that, or just more updates to companies who are starting their journey.
Yeah, definitely. Collaboration was definitely one of my points, as well as what Hugh has mentioned. Collaboration with other people outside of your company, but also, as I talked about, collaboration within your company. If you're a supplier who is coming on board to this journey in terms of compliance stage, is similar to what FPG experienced, I really recommend deciding who in your company will manage these customer requirements, or which team, because if there isn't that ownership that takes place, a lot of things will start to fall between the cracks. And when you are, if this is a very new space for you, getting involved with as many workshops, conferences such as this one is so important, just to get your head around about what responsible sourcing is, And it's a big step in itself to get used to the jargon, as there is a lot of words that get thrown around that one has to educate themselves in, as to know what exactly is being spoken about and what exactly is the customer requiring. And yeah, also as has been mentioned across many of the different sessions over this conference, is ultimately integrating these values of responsible sourcing into the business is so key. And a really good place to start is just to start bringing it up in those smaller meetings in the business. So in your weekly team meeting, make it an agenda item, and bringing it up in casual conversation. If you're someone who's genuinely really passionate about this topic, having a mindset that you want to educate those around you, you want to educate other suppliers, that's going to be really helpful to genuinely get other people and other businesses on board, is having that genuine concern and genuine passion for caring for people and caring for those in our supply chains.
Right. Thank you, Marty. It's definitely a good way to look at as well. And I think same thing, I just want to just pass to Sridevi from the Walmart, just to hear any thoughts you probably would like to share with the companies, and then we can move over to you, Sridevi. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Vishal. I would agree with what both Hugh and Marty have said. Just one quick addition, and that is align with the business. If you're in early stages and just starting out, align with the business within your company and really help them understand why. Because I think it's not enough to say we have to do this because the customer's asking us to do it. That may work for just launching a program, but if you really want to sustain it and have a world-class program, people have to believe it in their heads and their hearts, right? So we need to follow this in order to do business is a good rationale to begin with, but it's not going to help you really sustain and grow. I think this is something that really touches people's hearts. In my experience, I've found when they see the rationale is about improving lives in the supply chain, right? And I think that's a rationale that almost everyone identifies it. And that's really the why behind why we have programs like this. So I think take the time to work with your business partners and help them understand the why, because then they will really believe it with their hearts and understand how to look out for risk, even if you're not around to give them a program framework. And that's really where we, you want to get to. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Sridevi. Again, now, we have quietly overrun this session. So I would like to say thank you to all of the panelists and attendees who actually stayed sort of late as well to join the session and hear more. Unfortunately, there isn't enough time to answer more questions. We do have more questions, but there are no more sort of the time left. So we will be wrapping up the session in the 2 days. So again, extending my thank you for everyone.
Hello, everyone, and my name is Walter Lin. I'm the Managing Director of the Sedex in Asia. And really, thank you, the great panel discussion led by my colleague Vishal. And thank you for all the speakers in the session just now. It's a really good presentation. And thank you, everyone's time for being with us for 2 days online, and no matter where you are from. And I'd like to thank you your time. And I'd like to spend a few minutes to quickly go through some highlights and takeaways for these 2 days events. So on the first day, which is yesterday, Simon, the Sedex CEO, joined from the Sedex London in very early morning just to talking about the Sedex and the response business. I guess the key topics we talk about in these 2 days around COVID-19, the impact on business. And also Simon shared a great idea and also the case study around how Sedex can play an important role to support members on calibration and communication in response to the COVID-19 impact on the business. But also Simon did share a lot of quite useful tools which is available for Sedex members to use in response to the COVID, but also still carry on about the response business practical actions. And indeed, we're also talking about Sedex got around 27,000 members in Asia Pacific region. And this is a plan. We want to offer more resource and times and also the capacities to support and empower members in this region. Also, we have a very great speakers from the different international brands, investment firms, but also the UN agency to join us to talking about why Respond Business matters. I guess the reason why we put why Respond Business matter in that session is purely because in the day-to-day operations, people are really quite struggle to understanding why I have to do that. So for example, if you are a supplier, are constant asking by the customer to say you have a compliant, you will conduct a compliant social audit. You need to fill in something like a due diligence questionnaire. And also, if you are a brand and retailer, are gradually requested by the investors or the capital market to share your ESG data. So this is all coming to the question about why I need to do that. What would be the business case for us to do that? So in this session, all these great speakers are really talking about the reason why, no matter is it from the consumer's perspective or from the media, but also from the UN agency, also the investors, to really talk about the business case for the Respond Business in actions. Moving to the day one, we do got another panel talking about Respond Business in the supply chain, which if you are international company or if you are small and medium-sized enterprises globally, you still have to look at your own operation, but also your suppliers. So we do got a very good speaker from International Labour Organization, Kima, and Fuji Xerox, and JP Coca, and including VCCI, is Vietnam Chamber of Commerce, to really talk about how a company needs to roll out their Respond Business program in the supply chain, what the opportunities are, and what are the challenges, but also like the chambers of commerce, how can they put an important role in collaborating and empower the companies to do the better job in the journey of the Respond Business. And then we come to the day two, which this morning, and which Jessica from the Australian Border Force and talking about their progress on the modern slavery and human trafficking. I guess Jessica is trying to share about three main Australian governments respond to the modern day slavery in the supply chain. It's more about awareness raising for the business and also the awareness raising for the civil society, consumers, but also she's talking about the importance for the successful program, which is the collaboration. But she also calling out that the most significant challenge for business, it's more about understanding a supply chain, especially related to the modern slavery risk, and how we need to take action to take a response for that. Following by that, we do got the panel discussion, which led by my colleague, Alex, who is heading up Sedex in Japan, Australia, and New Zealand, and together with a few retailer brands and suppliers coming to talk about the collaboration in the age of the COVID-19. I guess the interesting conversation around this panel is more about the buyer or the customer need to supporting the supplier. But at the other end, the supplier and also the manufacturers, they should be able to support the customer, even they should education for the customers. Because most of the time, the Respond Business in the supply chain or supply chain social compliance, it's more about a requirement from the customer. And oftenly, the supplier won't see too much benefit, and then they are being told to do something. So it's more about how can we look at a balance between doing a good business, but also being a very long-term partnership between the buyer and suppliers. And also, we in here session, people really to talk about the cost, because anything if we invest into the Respond supply chain, Respond Business, or social compliance, etc., it's a kind of cost. But it's more about how can you change your mindset to think about this is a long-term investment. This is not like something a cost for the business. So it's kind of like something we need to really to look at a long-term vision rather than the short-term. And also we do got the Livilo from the UNDP, the Business and the Human Rights. So Livilo is a very experienced advisor for global human rights previously, but now in recent years, he really to look at the Asians business and human rights agenda. So his conversation is more around the government's action to implementation of the NAP, which means the government now is looking to take some very proactive actions to promote the responsible business. But at the same time, media also it's helping to point out the companies they should taking more responsibility as well. But there are still many challenges, especially in this region, for example, forced labor and child labor, but also we need to think about environment impacts, land rights, something like that. And also he mentioned about the due diligence by the EU and making sure the supply chain in Asia is green and clean. And we do got a last panel, which is it's the session led by my colleague Vishal and talking about supplier sustainability journey, and also how can you establish a partnership with the internal stakeholders to promote the sustainable supply chains. I guess the conversation in here is more about, one is whether you got your commitments. Second is about how can you to making your engagement to your internal stakeholders, which is your board level, your senior management team, but also you need to get engagement with your supplier, and especially with those suppliers, you need to have a long-term relationship. And in here, we do got the people from Walmart to really talking about their values for the business at 3 level, but also we heard a very good presentation from P&G to talk about the citizenship, and not only for the P&G itself, but also from the supplier. And Marty from Fresh Produce Groups and talking about their works with the farmers and also their stories to be proud with the Sedex members. And last but not least, Lego shared about their Planet's Promise and SDG, and also their long-term investments in children, environment, and people. So I guess that's a very quick recap for these 2 days session. And these sessions are recorded, and we do share these information and video via the social media channel. So if you want to get further information, or if you have any questions, just be free to reach out to us. And I'd like to thank you for all our sponsors and also the speaker and moderators. Without your support, we won't be able to have such a very great conference, even virtually, and to ensure everyone in the Asia Pacific region can got this opportunity, can hear discussion and share their best practice and insight. But also I'd like to call out to thank you for all of the Sedex colleagues who spend huge amount of their time on preparation and engaging with our member and the stakeholder for this event. And I'd like to say special thank you to Star and Vishal in our China and Indian office, and also Alex in our Australian office. But do like to say thank you for our CEO, Simon's support, but also Jessica, who is the Director for Corporate Affairs in Sedex. I'd like to say that thank you for their support, and all of our colleagues in the 4 office in China, Australian, Indian, and Japan. Thank you for their efforts, and also our overseas office support on this event. If you have any further questions and any comments on these events, please feel free to reach out to send an email to sedexasianews@sedexglobal.com, and we'll listen to your feedback. And then we try to see whether we can hold another session next year to invite you to join again. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Hope you can enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.